Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today, we're going to take a look at the studio catalog of one of my favorite musicians of all time who left us way before any of us were ready back in 2011. I'm talking about Irish guitar hero Gary Moore. Okay, prolific solo artist. He also did a couple quick little stints in Thin Lizzy, right? Collaborated with all sorts of people. Played in Coliseum 2, and toured and recorded with Greg Lake and Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce, and played with so many other great musicians and singers over the course of his career. A lot of really great solo albums. He went through, he had his kind of blues rock phase early on, then played in pretty much like a hard rock heavy metal style for most of the 80s, late 70s into the 80s, right? Then moved into more of a straight blues direction for a number of years, then started to get back into blues rock and hard rock and that sort of thing, and then before you know it, he's gone. Right, didn't even make it to his 60th birthday, unfortunately, and I still, sometimes like when your heroes pass, the ones that are really special to you, you kind of remember where you were at that time, at that moment that you found out that your hero had passed away. And I remember my wife and I had gone into New York City for like a nice 3-day weekend. We're like, all right, let's go spend the weekend in the city. Rent a hotel room, go out to dinner, a couple dinners, go see a show, go out to a couple pubs, that sort of thing. Great time. And we were actually on our way back. We took the bus this time instead of taking the train or driving. And we were on the bus, and we were literally pulling into the bus station in our town and getting ready to get off the bus. And I got some kind of like alert on my phone, and I looked at it, and there was the news that Gary had passed. And I remember it was like, it just, as great as the whole weekend was, that like kind of put a damper on everything. And I'll never forget it. And I mourned because this guy's been like one of my favorite guitar players for as long as I can remember, since I, was first starting to listen to music, and especially getting interested in guitar and guitar music. He's been that guy, or one of those couple of guys, definitely. So a lot of albums here. I'm going to talk about 20 albums today. I don't have all of them physical copies. I have a good chunk of them, but of course heard them all. I will say, he's got some that are not that great. He's got some that are spectacular and some that are just really, really solid. But, I'm going to kind of run through them all. I may not spend a lot of time on some of them because I want to kind of save the best things for the ones that matter the most to me. So kicking off with a few actually that I don't have here. So we got number 20. I'm going to go 1997's Dark Days in Paradise. So this is a time period, the late 90s, where I think Gary's just kind of figuring out what the hell to do. He'd been doing the blues rock things, making best business of his career doing that, but that only has a shelf life too. So after a couple of albums, he was left kind of trying, all right, now what do I do next? Can't keep cranking out these blues albums because the formula is going to run dry eventually. So he started to get into doing kind of like more pop flavored music with some kind of like contemporary beats and rhythms and things like that, singing and playing his guitar kind of over that sort of thing. So Dark Days in Paradise from 97, squarely in that vein. Not very good. Not really what I want to hear Gary doing. Same thing could be said number 19 for A Different Beat from 1999, which is the follow-up album. More of the same. Not memorable. Yeah, you got some good guitar solos here and there, but it's not the fiery Gary Moore we really want to hear. I always liked his vocals, and I think vocally these albums sound fine. I just don't think the material is quite there. And at the end of the day, is that really what I want to hear Gary Moore doing? Not really. So there you have those two. Number 18. Again, kind of like 2006's Old New Ballads Blues. Great playing. All right, heartfelt, emotional playing. One of the things I always loved about Gary is that he could absolutely slay you with a tender, emotional guitar solo or ballad, right? And usually on every album you'd get one, maybe two of those, and the rest would be pretty up-tempo, fiery stuff, whether it's the blues or the hard rock stuff. But to hear a whole album of that, at least for me, a little bit trying. So while I appreciate the kind of the ballads, the bluesy ballads album, some good stuff on there, not something I go back to. Not something I go back to. Number 17, 2007's Close As You Can Get. All right, so here he's kind of going back again. All right, let's go try the kind of the blues rock thing once again. That seems to be what's working, what's selling, and I think that's a pretty solid record. Okay, it's not one of his better ones, but it's still pretty good. He's got a good cast of characters on there with him. Production's good. As always, his playing is very fine, so I like that one. All right, number 16, Power of the Blues from 2004. Again, kind of more of the same. You know, there's some folks who grew up with Gary either in Thin Lizzy or those early solo albums. I think everybody kind of appreciates the blues era, but wished he didn't kind of go back to it so many times. You know, Bad for You Baby obviously is really good. Umbrella Man is cool. Walking Through the Park, Mojo Boogie actually is a very fun song. Good guitar tone on here, you know, Gary on his Les Paul, and or his Strat, depending on you know what he's playing on each tune. But I like this album, fun album. Not one of his best blues ones, but it's pretty damn good. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm showing a completely different one. So, Power of the Blues, number 16. All right. Number 15, sorry, is Bad for You Baby. So, number 6, you got these lists written down. You got so many stuff. Some you don't have, some you do have. So, Power of the Blues from 2004 is number 16. Number 15 is Bad for You Baby. So, that's the one I just talked about. But they both were kind of released, you know, right around the same time, a couple years apart. And very, very similar. All right. Good album, as is Power of the Blues. Next up at number 14 is Blues for Greenie from 1995. So there's his little homage to, of course, Peter Green, ex-guitar player Fleetwood Mac. Peter's still with us, right? As you know, he had actually acquired Peter's old Les Paul titled Greenie, okay? A gorgeous Les Paul. And that album is basically, like I said, a tribute to the guitar legacy of Peter Green. And a pretty fine testament, I think. You know, a lot of really good old school blues on there, which I always thought was pretty damn cool. Not a pretty rockin' album. It's a little more mellow, but some tasty solo and songs on there. So dig that quite a bit. All right, so number 13. You know what it is? I didn't put these in. Here's my problem. I normally put these albums in order and stack them up, and I did not do that. That's why I'm just kind of grabbing it. I'm figuring what's on the top is what's next. There is my problem. Not prepared for this one. All right, number 13, After Hours from 1992. So this is the follow-up to Still Got the Blues. This is actually a pretty ripping album. I remember when I first got this, I listened to this quite a bit. Always dug that cover shot. All right. A lot of really good songs on here. I think his tone is pretty damn fiery. But you could actually say that about a good chunk of the catalog. And he's got a good cast of characters on here. Let me see. You know, it might be easier for me to check the page rather than going looking at the CD booklet, which, of course, is microscopic, and I'm not wearing my glasses. So you got Will Lee on here, Bob Daisley, Andy Pyle, Johnny B. Gaden on bass, Graham Walker and Anton Fig on drums, Tommy Iyer on keyboards, and various other guys on horns and things like that. Cold Day in Hell is a really great track. Story of the Blues, Separate Ways. I always love Separate Ways quite a bit. Only Fool in Town, Key to Love, all strong stuff. Dig it. When it comes to his blues records, I think that After Hours and Still Got the Blues are probably my favorites. They're the first two. After that, the formula for me kind of waned a little bit, but there's plenty of good stuff in a lot of those other ones. All right, next up, I'm going to go to, bear with me here while I find it in my little stack here. I'm going to go to 1980's GForce. All right, coming in number 12. This is a pretty good record. It's kind of a product of its time. This was Gary trying to do more of a kind of like little mini supergroup, which actually really wasn't much of a supergroup. I think it was actually the way it was originally intended was going to be a supergroup. But basically here you have Gary on vocals and guitars, along with Willie D on lead and backing vocals, bass, keyboards, and stuff. Tony Newton on bass, and Mark Nossif on drums. All right, this project originally, from what I understand, was supposed to have Glenn Hughes on board, but he wound up splitting. More of a kind of heavy power pop type of direction here, but some stinging guitar work nonetheless. You is actually a really fun song. White Knuckles Rockin' and Rollins on here. She's Got You. I Look at You. Hot Gossip. You know, it's a decent album, fun album. Am I glad that Gary kind of didn't continue on this direction? Yeah, I think so. I think based on when this came out, I think I like what he did afterwards a lot better. So from there, I'm going to go to 2002's Scars. Okay, this is kind of going back to like the power trio thing. This has got Cass Lewis and Darren Mooney. Bass and drums. Pretty, you know, considering when this came out, so this is 2002, you know, he had done like a whole decade's worth of the kind of blues rock stuff. This is like more of a return to form to kind of like hard rock, or at least, you know, hard rock in early 2000s. I think it works pretty well. All right. Didn't really do big business, obviously. Rectify's a good song. Stand Up I like When the Sun Goes Down. Pretty cool album. Pretty gritty. I dig it. It's kind of fun. All right, next up, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. Way back to the beginning to what was called the Gary Moore Band, okay? Grinding Stone. This is early, basically, I mean, God, 1973, so Gary's a baby here, you know, barely out of his teens. Good mix of kind of bluesy rock, little touches of psychedelia, little hints of jazz and jazz fusion, you know. Gary not quite knowing where he fits in yet. He's still pretty young, but the amazing guitar skills are already there, obviously. So this is right around, you know, Skid Row era, prior to him hooking up with the Thin Lizzy guys by, you know, a couple years there. Pretty cool. I remember the first time I heard this, I was like, shit, man. And then you can see how young Gary is. Right? There he is. He had to be, I don't think he was even 20 yet when this came out. So pretty cool. I enjoy that album. It's good early, young Gary Moore. And any Gary Moore is pretty good Gary Moore. All right, so number 9, I'm going to do the album he did with Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker called Around the Next Dream, other than the title BBM. Okay. Baker Bruce Moore, or Bruce Baker Morse. Baker Bruce Moore, Bruce Baker Morse. I like this album. This, I think, the guys wanted to obviously get that kind of Cream sound. And I think for the most part it worked. Unfortunately, this pairing did not last long. You know, I sometimes liken this album to the kind of the first album that Robin Trower did with Jack Bruce and Bill Lorden, which I think has a lot of similarities. They're very, you know, similar to what was kind of going on in Cream, but obviously updated. You know, Waiting in the Wings, terrific song, City of Gold, Where in the World, and Jack Bruce is singing great on this album. I love Gary's guitar tone on it. He's got the wah-wah coming out in a couple tunes, which is not what he usually does, but again is kind of like a testament to Clapton in the Cream days. What else? Why Does Love Have to Go Wrong? That's another great song written by all three guys. You got Naked Flame on here, Can't Fool the Blues. I think it's a really good kind of bluesy hard rock album. All right, it kind of smolders a little bit. It doesn't scorch, right? It's not a crazy, you know, all-out guitar fest or anything like that. But I think the guys trying to do a, you know, early '90s version of Cream without Eric Clapton and with Gary Moore in its place. Not bad. Not bad. All right, next up. Where are we here? We're at number 8. I'm going to go with 1987's Wild Frontier. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people who probably rank this a little bit higher, and that's totally cool. I think for me, I always liked Wild Frontier. I think Wild Frontier might have some of his best songs. I think this is the album where he's definitely trying to move away a little bit from some of the heavy rock that he was doing just prior, but as history shows, he went right back to that formula after this album. But this is where he really kind of takes a look at his inner, you know, Irish and Celtic roots. Okay, you got some drop-dead classics on here. You get Over the Hills and Far Away. Classic Gary Moore. Okay, Wild Frontier. Great title track. Okay, you got his great version of The Loner, written by Max Middleton, okay, and Gary Moore. Killer instrumental. It's one of my favorite instrumental tracks by him. You got the fun take on the Easy Beats song Friday on My Mind. You got Strangers in the Darkness. Thunder Rising is probably the heaviest song on the album. That's a really good one. Then you got Johnny Boy. Okay, another very Irish sounding album. And I think critics love this. A lot of fans love it. I've heard many people talk about this as being one of their favorite Gary Moores. I dig it a lot. I just like others better, but I still think it's a very solid record. Coming in at number 7, his big, huge comeback, his first move into a different direction with the blues. 1990s, Still Got the Blues. I mean, come on, that title track. Gotta love it, right? This sold. This went platinum in the UK. It went gold here in the States. Multi-platinum in various other territories around the world. Just, you had a cast of characters on here: Bob Daisley, and Brian Downey, and Don Airey, Nicky Hopkins, Andy Pyle, all sorts of folks playing on this album. Albert King, right? The list goes on and on. You got does a terrific remake of Oh Pretty Woman. I remember the first time I heard that, and that's like bluesy, but it's absolutely ferocious like Gary Moore. Okay, title track obviously great. Walking by Myself, Texas Strut, Too Tired, King of the Blues, all sorts of really good songs on here. Fiery playing. Again, it's fiery and rocking enough where it doesn't completely alienate his hard rock followers from before. He would kind of like start to mellow out a little bit after this one, but it's that Gary Moore crazy ass playing that we all love is still on here. That tone is on here. Those shredding solos are on here, but it's just done in a different context. So a really, really good album. Love it. Lots. All right, so number 6, 1989. Again, right before that one, you got After the War. So here, he goes from Wild Frontier in 87, and then he goes right back to, pretty heavy rock and roll. Got the title track, got Speak for Yourself, rockin' song, Living on Dreams, Lead Clones, where Ozzy comes in. It's a very Zeppelin-sounding heavy rock tune. Got Ozzy singing with him. You got Running from the Storm, good melodic hard rocker. What else? Blood of Emeralds. Great song, co-written by Neil Carter, who was working quite a bit with him, playing keyboards, helping songwriting, backing vocals, and a little bit of rhythm guitar. Ready for Love, a lot of good songs on here. Good rockin' album. And I was like, for me, I liked Wild Frontier, but then I was very happy to hear him come back with this because I really liked the hard rockin' Gary Moore stuff. And then he did a complete about face again with Still Got the Blues. So I was like, what is going on here? It's like Gary doesn't know what he wants to do, right? Number 5. Some people are a little down on this album, but I quite loved it when it came out. 1985's Run for Cover. Personally, I think that the combination of Gary and Glenn Hughes is spectacular because, as you know, I love both guys, and I thought that the tunes, the deal was those guys that was going to be the band. So it was going to be Glenn on bass and vocals, Gary on guitar and vocals, and rounding out the lineup, who else is on here? Phil Lynott shows up on this album as well. I got Andy Richards on keyboards, Neil Carter's on board, Don Airey, Bob Daisley. So, this was going to be a serious deal. But, right around this time, and this is like the second time that Gary tried to work with Glenn, the GForce was the other one. And, here, Glenn's a mess at this point in time. So this is, right before the thing with Black Sabbath and Tony Iommi, 7 Star, and Glenn is just, the 80s were not kind to him. He was just, a mess on all sorts of drugs and not a very good decade for him. So he proved to be very unreliable, and Gary was not happy with a lot of what was going on in the studio. So they basically took what was done, they put that on the album, but Gary went and sang the rest of the stuff and got someone to play bass. So, you had Run for Cover on here, Reach for the Sky, great song. You got Military Man is on here, that features Phil. Empty Rooms was originally on here. You got Out in the Fields, Nothing to Lose, screaming Glenn vocals on that. Once in a Lifetime, All Messed Up. Very prophetic, right? All Messed Up with No Place to Go, right? They've got Glenn singing that one as well. Listen to Your Heartbeat, kind of another mellow song. But, you got 3 songs sung by Glenn. You got Reach for the Sky, Nothing to Lose, All Messed Up, all great tracks. You got Gary singing the rest, and you got Phil Lynott singing Military Man with Gary. So I think it's a really good album. Great guitar playing. I dig it quite a bit. All right, now we are up to the really great stuff. So now the final 4 is like just absolutely stellar stuff. So I'm going to go next from 1983, little Dirty Fingers action. So this is, Gary at his blistering hard rock best. exceptional stuff here. You got Gary on guitars and lead and backing vocals. You got Charlie Hune, the great Charlie Hune on lead vocals, Don Airey on keyboards, Jimmy Bain on bass, and Tommy Aldridge on drums. That is a pretty outstanding lineup. That's a lineup that should have stayed together, right? So you got Hiroshima, however you say it, the blazing, quick little instrumental, Dirty Fingers. Gary was into doing those kind of, can't let Eddie Van Halen have all the fun with Eruption. Got to do my own stuff. You got the heavy rockin' Bad News. You got a cover of Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. You got Run to Your Mama. The crankin' Nuclear Attack, which you also did with Greg Lake. Okay, Kidnapped, Really Gonna Rock Tonight, Lonely Nights, and Rest in Peace. Blistering stuff here. That's Gary at his most kind of like fast and frantic, right? Gotta love it. As is my next choice, coming in at number 3. Some may rank this a little higher. From 1978, Back on the Streets. Another killer album with some spectacular instrumentals. So here we've got with the lineup, you got Phil Lynott on plays bass, lead vocals a little bit here and there. Don Airey, John Mole on bass, Brian Downey's on drums, Simon Phillips also on drums, Gary, of course, on guitars, a little bit of bass and lead vocals. Phenomenal stuff. So here you can kind of feel and hear the influence of what Gary was doing with the Coliseum 2 band, that kind of ripping jazz rock, jazz fusion, all over this album, because you got Flight of the Snow Goose, a crazy instrumental, Hurricane, another great instrumental, What Would You Rather Be, or A Wasp, another great instrumental. All that stuff could have come right off of the Coliseum 2 albums, but it's an absolute shred fest for Gary. You got Back on the Streets, great, quick, fast, hard rock song. All right, you got their version of Don't Believe a Word with him and Phil. Okay, you got Fanatical Fascist, another song written by Phil for this project here. Great hard rock song. Song for Donna, very cool song. And of course, the absolute drop-dead classic Parisian Walkways, which is, let's be real, that's the best collaboration between Phil Lynott and Gary Moore that you'll ever hear. So, the top 2. Now, you got to understand, I was massively into these albums when they came out. So you're talking about a 16, 17-year-old kid who is all into guitars and guitar music, hard rock and metal, and then this guy Gary Moore comes along and man, I was just absolutely captured. So my number 2 is going to be his 1983 release, Victims of the Future. I know some of you in the U.S. are probably looking at this and saying, wait a second, that's not the album cover I remember. No, it's actually not. It wasn't the one I had on LP. This was, I believe, the original UK album cover. The North American one had like the city in flames with the big Gary Moore logo at the top, Victims of the Future at the bottom. I like that one a lot better than this, which I feel is kind of blah, but a great lineup on here. Again, you've got Gary on guitar and vocals, Neil Carter on keyboards and vocals, Neil Murray plays bass on a few tracks, Mo Foster also on bass, Bob Daisley also on bass, Ian Pace from Deep Purple's on drums, along with Bobby Cuisinart on drums, and Noddy Holder does a little bit of backing vocals on Shapes of Things. Noddy Holder, of course, from Slade. But here, depending on which album you had, UK or US, you have a little bit different track listings. But, Victims of the Future, killer title track. Teenage Idol, Fast and Furious, Shapes of Things, an amazing cover. One of my favorite covers of all time. That, of course, is a Yardbirds classic. You got Empty Rooms, okay, also appeared on here. You got Empty Rooms on this and on the Run for Cover album. What else? Murder in the Skies, great grinding heavy rock, okay. All I Want, Hold On to Love, Law of the Jungle. All right, you also, depending on which release, the U.S. release had Devil in Her Heart, which is a killer song. All right, and great album. A great album with some absolutely sensational guitar work. I go back to this one and my number 1, Corridors of Power. Again, this is the UK album cover. The US one, kind of similar concept with Gary standing there, except in the US one, he's holding a Les Paul and he's kind of he's got wearing that kind of funky suit, what have you, and it's in color where this is in black and white. But this is the first album I got by Gary, and this, of course, is 1982, and it'll always remain my number 1. And so many great songs. The first song I heard Always Gonna Love You on the radio, which, the beginning, it's got some piano, it's kind of like a ballady type thing, and then all of a sudden that guitar solo comes in. You're like, whoa, who in the world is that? That's the latest from Gary Moore. His new album, Corridors of Power, is out now. That's what we used to hear on the radio. Like, holy smokes. And then from there, you make your way to Don't Take Me for a Loser, another great melodic hard rock song. Does a cover of the Free classic Wishing Well, which is killer. Gonna Break My Heart Again. You got Fallen in Love with You, which is the one, that was like a song back in the day where I'd always play to whatever girlfriend I had at the time, and they'd be like, oh, that's a really great song, yeah. But it's not indicative of the rest of the album, right? So then you got End of the World, which, of course, has that amazing guitar solo to kick it all off, and then it's headbangingly heavy. You got Jack Bruce on guest vocals. You got Rockin' Every Night, another speedy hard rocker. Cold Hearted, more of kind of like moody, gritty rock. And then I Can't Wait Until Tomorrow, the near 8-minute long epic at the end of the album, which I think is a really great melodic, emotional rocker with a absolutely sensational guitar solo to close off the album from Gary. So, and he's a pretty damn good singer, I always thought. So there you have it. That is my list of Gary Moore, ranking the albums. Corridors of Power, Victims of the Future, Back on the Streets, Dirty Fingers, Run for Cover, After the War, Still Got the Blues, Wild Frontier, Around the Next Dream with Baker, Bruce, and more, Grinding Stone, Scars, GForce, After Hours, Blues for Greenie, Bad for You Baby, Power of the Blues, Close as You Get, Old New Ballads Blues, A Different Beat, and Dark Days in Paradise. 20 of them. Like I said, there's some here that are just drop dead classics for me, absolutely special. And there's like a handful that I'm like, if I never heard again, won't be the end of the world, Especially a couple of them, that do not reach for those ever. But some sensational playing, and might as well throw in the Thin Lizzy album, right? Black Rose, into this mix. And that first Greg Lake album is pretty damn good too, if you want to hear some sensational Gary Moore playing in those Coliseum. We're going to actually cover those Coliseum 2 albums. We're going to do, in a few weeks, we're going to do a Coliseum/Coliseum 2 show, rank those albums all together, because I think that needs to be done. John Heisman and company, right? Some fine stuff there. So anyway, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. All right, so now we got Gary Moore out of the way. Who's next, you might ask? All right, hopefully tomorrow, Frank Marino is coming up. Also, hopefully tomorrow, Procol Harum, if not tomorrow, this weekend. Doing a Nearfest kind of remembrance show tonight with Rob LaDuca and Chad Hutchinson, the two guys who made it all happen for that great Northeast Art Rock Festival from 1999 till, God, when did that go? 2011? Something like that. I forget exactly when it ended. I went to the first 7 of them. Amazing festival. We got another really special guest coming in this afternoon that I'm not yet divulging, so that'll be happening over the weekend. Going to rank the albums of Voivod, the great Canadian thrash metal band, next week. Neil Morris coming on the show Tuesday. Neil Morris, ex of Spock's Beard, also from the Neil Morris Band, Transatlantic, Flying Colors, so many other projects he's got going on. He's got this new kind of covers thing coming out with Mike Portnoy and company, so that's set to be released real soon. So we're going to be talking about that and all sorts of other things Neil Morris-ish, so you don't want to miss that. So stay tuned, everybody, and we'll see you later on. Oh, tomorrow, don't forget, 2011, favorite album of the year tomorrow morning as we finish out our little series on favorite albums of the year as we move our way up to 2019. All right, so we'll see you guys real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.